So I'd like to bring up speaker number one. I'm just going to bring, and just so you know, when I bring you up, speaker number one, role model number one, if you want to pull the microphone over, because you have a lot of slides, you're more than welcome to. Number one, I'm actually going to pull this over for her. I'm going to drag it over. She didn't do anything big yet. Time Magazine, 30 under 30, changing the world. Oh, Forbes, the 5 most powerful women changing the world. There she is with Marie Folio. By the way, there she is on the famous red dot as well, and that was recently, right?
Yeah.
That just happened. She has done several TEDx. She's done all that. She is tonight's charity of choice. Well, not she, but her organization. I'd like to bring up, and she'll no further explanation needed, Miss Tammy Tibbetts.
Woo!
Hi everyone, I'm so thrilled to be back here. I feel like I was promoted from an interviewee on stage a couple shows ago to now a role model, which is very humbling. And I'm also glad I'm going first because, one, it's very on brand for me, and two, I was humbled to be in the company of Jordan and Sandy. And also a fun story to share before I begin is that how I know Michael is because of Robin Gelfenbein and her show Yum's the Word, which is here. And Michael was helping out, and we started a conversation. He asked me where I'm from. I said South Brunswick, New Jersey, and turns out his father was my elementary school music teacher, Mr. Cedar. So it's a very small world. So I'm going to begin now. This question of what do I want to be when I grow up? This is something that I started to figure out when I was 15 years old, so half the age I am now. I no longer qualify for the under 30 lists. That was when I was a sophomore in high school. It was the year 2001. American history literally changed while I was sitting in US history class. And my own life changed dramatically when I was sitting in one of my electives, the classes that you got to pick out of your personal interest. And for me, that was journalism. After being successful in my honors English freshman year class, I thought, okay, maybe writing is something that I could do for a living someday. And I ended up loving it. Here's a picture of me from way back when. And I think one of the reasons I love journalism is because I was incredibly shy as a high school student. I was later named the most shy in my class of 2003 when I graduated. But journalism and being a reporter gives you the freedom to just walk up to random people that you don't know or you don't think you're cool enough to talk to and ask them questions for your story. And of course they want to talk to you because if you quote them, their name will be in print. So it was a great exercise for me to become a little more confident and to just get to know more people. So that year, when I was a sophomore, I decided that I was destined to be a journalist. And not just any journalist, but a New York Times journalist. I really was aiming high. And the reason that was my dream is because I discovered the most famous alumna of South Brunswick High School was Anna Quindlen, class of 1970. She is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist of the New York Times. She was a columnist for Newsweek, and I just idolized her. I thought, if she could do it and she walked these same halls, so could I. And as a student journalist, I started doing some pretty hard-hitting news stories. For someone who grew up in a pretty secure and safe home and community, one of the stories I was most proud of was this one on gang violence in Central Jersey. It was on the cover of the teen section of the newspaper and won some awards and left a huge impression on me and the kind of serious career path that I wanted to follow. So for my birthday that year, I asked, or was it Christmas, I asked my parents if they could give me a subscription to Newsweek magazine. And of course, this was like the heyday of magazine publishing, unlike now. Newsweek I don't think is even in print anymore. And there were at least 5 major teen magazines that I should have been reading. 17, Cosmo Girl, Elle Girl, YM, and for those who were a little more scandalous, Cosmopolitan, like the other girls at school were reading. But I didn't want any of that because it didn't feel like those were magazines that spoke to me. So I did get Newsweek, and as I was reading it, I think back how it did, growing up and sort of coming of age as a student journalist right after September 11th happened, influenced me in any way, and it may have. But I think the fact that I just, wasn't fashionable, didn't wear any makeup, didn't talk to boys, made me feel like that was the path that was for me, not the lifestyle and the women's and teen magazines. Most of what I did when I was a teenager in high school was write and study all the time. I didn't have that many friends. My best friend was actually Buster, my friend Rabbit. There he is, reading Shakespeare with me and looking up the words that we didn't know. Yeah, I know, he was such a genius. But really, and that explains to you how I was not so popular in high school. But one day in journalism class, I'll never forget, we had a guest speaker. And her name was Lori Bergamano. She, I guess, was a friend of my teacher and came in, took the train from Manhattan to South Brunswick for the day to talk to us about her job. And I don't think she has no idea that she left such an impression on me, but she talked about how she worked at a women's magazine and how a magazine comes together. The different departments of beauty and fashion and fitness and the photo shoots and all of it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really interesting. I bet you some of my classmates, maybe they'll become magazine editors. I saw the potential of one of us to be able to achieve a career like that in New York City, all because she was there and telling us how she did it. And I wanted to share those two examples of Anna Quindlen and Lori Bergamano with you today, because what they remind me is one of my core beliefs, and that's, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And while I hadn't met Anna Quindlen at the time, just knowing what she had accomplished, and for Lori to come to our classroom and tell us how she got where she was, it just made me see that there were more possibilities for myself as a journalist than I might have imagined. And by the time I went on to college, the College of New Jersey, journalism was my major. So who do you think I became more like? The serious New York Times quality journalist like Anna Quindlen, or the glossy, glamorous women's magazine editor type like Lori? Well, maybe a mix of both, maybe neither. I can tell you, I did make it into the New York Times eventually, and I'll tell you more about that later. And I did end up interning for women's magazines, like Ladies' Home Journal and 17. So Lori would have been proud of that, I'm sure. But when I grew up, and I'm defining grew up by when I started to get paid for what I did. You'll never guess, unless you Google me before this, where I ended up. I was a Prom website editor. Yes, there's me in a sea of prom dresses in the 17 magazine fashion closet. And while this is just incredulous, because I was the most unqualified prom editor you could have ever hired. I didn't go to my own prom. I didn't go to any school dance, period. But yeah, this was my job. I was running the website for that drew all of the teen readers of 17, Cosmo Girl, and Teen Magazine. I was publishing the stories and the slideshows of prom dresses, telling them how to ask out their date and get ready for their big night. I still can't believe that I actually did that. One of the parts of my job was I created a video series called The Ultimate Prom. And this was where we crashed a real New York City high school prom, and I partnered with a record label to bring musicians. And this was Kid Cudi. It was artists who were bigger at the time, like Cat DeLuna, Ashanti, and JoJo. They performed for these kids who were just like, you can see in their faces how excited they are. And that was my first prom. You know, I was 23 years old and dressed in a prom dress, surrounded by all of these high school kids, and making this crazy dream come true for them. And while some people might have called me a prom expert, the people who knew me the best knew that what I actually was an entrepreneur, because I was creating these ideas and the video series that advertisers ended up putting hundreds of thousands of dollars behind. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just made it up as I went along and was successful at it. And then after that, my next role was in the same company. I became the first social media editor of 17 magazine. So that was in 2010. I literally became the voice online of the magazine that I never read as a teenager because I felt like an outsider. I didn't feel cool enough for it. And again, it was one of the best jobs I could have never imagined because I had my finger essentially on the pulse of American teenagers, millions of girls. I could just put out a tweet and instantly get feedback from them. So the print editors would come to my desk and say, Tammy, can you ask the girls about this and that? And of course, too, as we were reminiscing about pre-Google days, this was right when brands were getting on social media and starting to have those direct conversations with their readers. So it was a real privilege to be in that role. And while I never was a 17 reader, I think I inherently understand the lack of confidence that a lot of girls have, but also their desire and their hopefulness to make a real difference in the world and to overcome the obstacles that are in their way. So my success in that role, in growing 17 social media following, led to this, becoming on the cover of one of the industry magazines, Folio. And I mean, I can't imagine, 15-year-old me would have never believed that this would be possible to be on the cover of a magazine. And I remember when the editor called me up to say, we're going to put you in our 13 under 30 issue, and we'd like to have you on the cover. This was in 2012. I remember telling him, I think that's a mistake. I don't think you want to put me on your cover because I'm not the future of this industry. Later this year, I'm actually planning on leaving because you see on the side, I'm running this nonprofit organization called She's the First. I started it a few years ago, as a YouTube video that I launched, and we provide scholarships to girls around the world, and it's grown so much that it's time for me to lead it full time. Maybe you should pick one of the other under 30 people so that they could be on the cover instead. And he said, actually that makes us want to put you on the cover even more. So I said, okay, just don't tell my boss, because she doesn't know yet. And so this came out in my final year in the industry. It was a big year for me. It was the year that I leaped into She's the First full time. She's the First started in 2009, just as a YouTube video, as I mentioned, and then snowballed into this movement for girls' education, where we're giving girls who don't have any role models around them, essentially, the chance to have an education and to be the first in their families to graduate from high school. And once they do that, the possibilities for them are endless. They can either continue their education in university or get a job and earn an income that is significantly higher than anyone in their family has ever earned before. And she has the choice to, instead of be forced into an early marriage and have children when she's still a teenager, she's able to do exactly what I did and choose the career that would bring her the most fulfillment and purpose. One of the reasons that I told Michael that I would speak here tonight is because there's this message that I wanted to share on, yes, the belief that I have that you have to see it in order to be it,
but also acknowledging that that mantra has its limitations too. I think when you're on that path to pursue this idea of what you want to be, because someone around you has shown you that it's a possibility and you could do it, on that journey, you oftentimes find an opportunity to be a first and to take on a role, be it a Prom website editor, social media editor, or something else, to have a job that no one else before you had. And then you don't really have an example of what to do, but you have an education, you have a network to fall back on. And the path that you take to discover that is such a privilege, and that's something that myself and other She's the First supporters, I think, really recognize, is that as long as you have that education, you have the opportunity to become, you know, the next whoever you look up to, or just to become the first you. How many of you saw the viral video earlier this year? It was actually a British video of women who were in a classroom. It was called the Inspiring the Future. There were women who were in a classroom, just dressed like all of you are today in their casual clothes, with a bunch of kids who were asked to draw a firefighter, a surgeon, various professions. And they ended up drawing men in those roles. And then, the best part of the video, if you haven't seen it, sorry, I'm spoiling it a little bit, but it's worth watching anyways. After they drew those pictures, the women who were in the classroom, dressed in their plain clothes, came out in their uniforms. And the kids' faces just dropped, because they were like, wow, our special guests were actually these professions. And it just blew their mind that women would have those roles. And I think this is a really important thing to recognize, and how you can apply my personal story to the real world, is especially with girls younger than I was when I was 15. There are still so many young girls who don't see their potential in industries that are dominated by men. And I'm assuming that all of you here tonight, because it's Tuesday night in New York City, you're at an event like this, there's probably something awesome that you do or have done for a living. And I think about the ways that you can do that as well, and go into classrooms to show girls and boys the possibilities for them. One of the most exciting things about this year, I think, is that for the first time, there are little girls who are saying they want to be president of the United States. And whether or not you're a proud Hillary supporter like I am or not, you have to admit that that is incredible. There was one girl who, her name is Lily, and she wrote to Hillary Clinton and said that she wanted to change her name to Lillery. She wanted to be president someday too. And Hillary actually wrote back to her, this is online, it went viral too, and told her, you don't need to change your name to Lillery to be like me. I might become the first female president, but you can be the next. So there's just never been a better time for girls, especially here in the US, to see their potential. So how can you go and inspire kids in your community? Not all of you have access or friendships with teachers who will invite you in. So I have the answer for you. It's called Skype in the Classroom, and this is something that I've done myself, and it is very rewarding. Skypeintheclassroom.com is a website where anyone can create a profile and describe what you do for a living. And there are a network of teachers on that site who are looking for people just like you. They're from classrooms, in the Midwest, in Alaska, even globally, who are secluded, and they don't have the ability to invite people in who work in a city and in professions like you. So you can arrange to do a Skype visit to their classroom for a half hour of your day. And just think, if you do that, how you might be the Lori Bergamano that some kid is talking about 15 years later on stage. Now, as I wrap up, I want to end my story sort of where I began, because I promised I would tell you how I wound up in the New York Times. So last year, in November, the New York Times hosted She's the First for our annual fundraising breakfast, which is called the Mentor Breakfast. And it was at that event that we, for the first time, we accomplished our goal of raising $1 million in 1 year. So within those walls, it happened. So given, my prior dreams, this was very special to me. But also, the chief revenue officer at the Times donated ad space to She's the First. So I got to write the copy for the ad. My words were in print. But even better, 2 of our scholars were pictured in that ad. They're from Nepal, and seeing their faces in the business section of the Times on November 17th of last year, it just got me so excited to see what will they be when they grow up. And certainly, if they're already in the New York Times, the possibilities for them are endless. So I'm very grateful I got to share my story today with you.
We're talking like I'm not working hard enough. It's just I'm not working hard enough. There's so much more. But you know what? You pave that way. You show it's possible to make such a difference. But I seriously, you didn't get to talk enough about She's the First. Just give us some numbers, some statistics, some more information about She's the First, how people could get involved in anything. Just give your elevator pitch.
Sure. Well, visit our website, she'sthefirst.org, because we just relaunched it yesterday. We have 805 scholars across 11 countries, and they are extraordinary. We have provided over 2,000 years of education, so over 2,000 annual scholarships. We also have 216 campus chapters across the United States in high schools and colleges, so both young men and women who are doing fundraising and advocacy throughout the year. But our supporters are of all ages. And our scholars are, this is what my TEDx talk was about, is how our scholars just aren't beneficiary of these generous funds. They are selected based on financial need, merit, and their potential to be leaders.
Yeah.
So they're in their communities galvanizing people and changing the perspectives of those who don't think that it's worthy to have girls in school.
And like you said, if you see one person in your community do it, that's a massive stone in the middle of the pond rippling out. And it's true, if you don't know, if you go into a restaurant, you want something to eat, and it's not on the menu, you don't even order it. So by demonstrating it's possible to even one person, but what was it that made you say, go from 17 to say, that's what you want to do? I know you sort of touched it, but that is such a specific thing. Third world countries, girls. Is there a specific age range that you target?
Most of our scholars are in high school.
So high
they're
school.
Teenagers,
Okay.
yeah, because we're getting them to graduation.
The idea is to get them to graduation. But so what made you say that? Because we're all sitting here, we're like, I know I want to give, or some people might be going, I want to give, I want to make a difference. Where did that come from?
Well, journalism, because when I was in college, my senior year, I reported on a story about a woman who was a refugee of the Liberian Civil War, and she was working on building a school and providing scholarships to kids. So it was really through my student journalism work that I became aware. I'm first in my family to graduate from college, although that wasn't an inspiration in starting She's the First. It's a correlation, and I just wasn't that globally aware growing up as a kid. So when I saw these numbers and I heard these stories, I was like, as a journalist, you have to expose these terrible truths and facts and be unbiased. And I felt really conflicted, like I can't know all of this and not do something to be part of the solution. So that's when my life as a volunteer began for the issue. And She's the First started not with any intent of founding a nonprofit. It was just let me use my social media skills, which I'm really good at in my day job, to get an idea out into the world targeted towards my generation, millennials, of how they could use social media to crowdsource funds to support a girl. Called it She's the First, and then the rest is history. So as for what you can do, just being here tonight, you've already made a contribution. And some people can give more, some people can start a fundraiser, but even just word of mouth is so powerful, and I can't tell you how many times someone has told a friend or family member about She's the First, and it's led to great things.
Yeah, I've sent multiple people to your website. Say, go to this, which by the way, if you do want to give an additional donation, even if it's $1, Phoebe will have the bucket in the back after the show if you want to put a little extra in. That's up to you, no obligation, but whatever support we can do. So this is my question for you. Here you are, 17 magazine, many people's dream job, right? Like people, and you're like, how did I even get here in the first place? What was it that made you say, there's something else? Was it a feeling? Was it a voice? Did you always know it when you were there from the very beginning? Because so many times you talk to people who are, especially in New York, you hear this all the time. I've got a good job, I've got a good career, I live on the 85th floor of my high-rise, but they're not happy, right? What was it for you? Was it unhappiness? Was it unsettledness? What was it that drove you to go, I don't care that I got the job. I got something bigger or different for yourself. What was it?
Yeah, and I loved my job. I wasn't one of those people who was like, oh, this isn't fulfilling me, I'm going to quit. Well, she's the first who was 3 years into it, and I was just trying to keep up with our partner organizations internationally who were responding so positively to the funds and the network that we were providing them and our scholars. And then on the other hand, all of our donors and people who wanted to fundraise, that I just wasn't getting any sleep. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Like, I can't keep doing both because I'm not going to be 100% at my job and I'm not going to be 100% at She's the First. I have to choose one. And then it was really like the stories of our scholars and how courageous they were being with no fallback plan. And I knew that if this didn't work out, someone else in the magazine industry would hire me, if I gave it a go for a year. But our scholars don't have that plan B, and yet they're being courageous and they're taking the risk. So if I didn't at least do that, I wasn't, that wasn't fair to them.
Everything you talked about, whether you know it or not, was about taking risk. Leaning in, taking the risk. It just sounds like you're just like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Even if you had the voice in your head that was going to say, oh, I shouldn't do that. It sounds like you're like, I'm not listening to that voice, right? So I leave you with this. I might have asked this in the last show. I don't remember. If you had a microphone that reached the entire world, you have 15 seconds to reach the entire world. What would you say? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I remember that question from last time. I would say, give a girl a chance and she will do the rest.
Tammy Tibbetts, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely amazing.